Welcome to Filingstack. It's Zahid from Filingstack Accounting Software, and in this video I'll be discussing the key features available at filingstack.com. Once you sign up and log in, you can add an entity or business or company. The software is ideal for accounting practices who process their clients' accounting records, or for businesses who need to generate invoices or who need to view their business's performance. When you log in for the first time, there'll be a demo company that will show on the info page. The info page is where all of the companies that we have added will show. To add a new entity, we can click Add Entity. We can then enter the entity's details. In this case, I'll add a doctor. We'll call it Dr. Wasim Bobet Inc. For financials type, we'll choose IFRS SME. For the address, we'll put in a random address here. For industry, we'll put medical practice. You can put any relevant industry description. For these other details, these are optional. For registration number, we can put in the registration number if applicable. In this case, I'll put in this number as the registration number. Thereafter, if we need to adjust the financial year start or end dates, we can do that. In this case, I'll leave it as the financial year ending 28 February 2026. Once we click Add Business, what this will do is it will add this business onto the list of businesses on the info page. Thereafter, we can select the business by clicking on the business's name. So in this case, we added the 2026 year, so we can click on that row, and that will then select that business. The next thing that I'd like to do is to upload the bank statements for this business. So I clicked on Process Bank Statements, and that took me to the accounts page. We can also click on the accounts link on top here, and that will take us to this accounts page. Initially, I'll need to add a bank account for this practice, so I can click Add Bank Account. I can then enter the bank name as well as the opening balance and the date of the opening balance. So we'll put it as 1 March, and once we click Add Bank Account, that bank account will then be added. If we have multiple bank accounts, we can add multiple bank accounts and then choose a bank account every time we're uploading bank statements for each bank account. Thereafter, I can upload the bank statement. We support uploading bank statements in the CSV file format. If we have a PDF bank statement and we need to convert it to CSV, we can go to the info page. We can go then to Process PDFs, and we can upload the PDF bank statement over here. The software will then convert it to CSV. Once it's converted, we can go back to the accounts page where we can upload that statement. So in this case, I'll click Choose File, and I'll select a file that I have saved. Thereafter, I can click Upload File, and if the software didn't pick up which column has which data, so in this case it picked up already that the first column has date, the second column has description, and the third column has amount. If it didn't pick this up, I'll need to manually tell it that column 1 has the transaction date, column 2 has the description, and column 3 has the amount. So I can manually select those items as well. Thereafter, I can scroll down and I can view a sample of the transactions that the software picks up from the CSV file. The date format, I can leave it as year, month, day. If it was in a different date format, I can change this over here. In this case, I'll leave it as Yemen. Thereafter, I can click import, and this will then upload all of these transactions. Once the uploading is complete, I can scroll down and I can then proceed to allocate each of the transactions. So for example, I can allocate medical supplies to medical expenses. The first column, or the first row rather, on top here is a row where we can add transactions manually. So for example, if we have just a few transactions perhaps in the initial year and we want to add them manually instead of uploading a CSV file, we can use the first row for that. Thereafter, I can proceed with allocating all the remaining transactions. So each time I do an allocation, I can click save, and that will then save those allocations. To allocate multiple transactions quickly, we have two buttons on top here. One is AI auto allocate, and this allows us to allocate transactions based on the industry description that we entered when we added the company initially. So because we put medical practice, if we click on AI auto allocate over here, what this will do is it will look at the industry description and it will seek to allocate all the transactions based on that. So currently it's processing these transactions. It will then seek to allocate all of these transactions to a relevant account. Another button that we do have available is auto allocate by prior allocations, and what this allows us to do is, if we have a history of transactions, for example, we uploaded a CSV file before and we allocated transactions, now we're uploading a new CSV file, we can click on auto allocate by prior allocations, and what that will do is it will look at all of the transaction descriptions previously and how those were allocated, and it will allocate the new transactions similarly. So for example, if we put medical supplies to medical expenses, and when we upload a new CSV file, it will then allocate all of the medical supplies to the same account that we allocated it previously. We can see here that most transactions were successfully allocated. So for example, if we sort this by account group, we can review that our allocations, or the allocations done by the AI auto allocate button, are correct. So as we can see here, cleaning was put to cleaning, and then if we scroll through over here, we've got utilities that was put to electricity and water. And for example, all of these receipts, fee items, were put to fee income 1. And then if we go further down, we can see we've got more receipts. If we continue scrolling over here, we've got insurance, which was put to insurance. Medical supplies were allocated to medical supplies, and then there are some that are unallocated. So we can click save changes over here, and we can then proceed either to batch edit. So to batch edit, for example, we can search using the search bar, and for example, we've got some rent that hasn't been allocated. So what we can do here is we can tick the checkbox on top. Once we allocate one transaction to rent, all the ticked transactions will be allocated to that same account. We can then click save changes, and that will then save those changes. Thereafter, we can proceed with allocating any remaining transactions. So if we unfilter this search bar, and let's click save changes to save the changes. So we have allocated all of these transactions. We can check if there are any unallocated transactions, and there are none, so that's good. We can then proceed to review our allocations. If we scroll to the top here, we do have options to export all of the transactions to CSV, as well as to separate older and newer transactions. So if we tick on a transaction and click this mark checked entries as historical button, what that will do is it will move it over to the historical entries tab. We can see that the current year that is selected is the year ending 28 February 2026, and this is our bank balance. We can verify against the bank statement that we uploaded to ensure that this bank balance shown here matches the closing bank balance as at the last date that was uploaded. We can see also on top here there's a time tracking timer which tracks how much time we spend on the accounts page, and it automatically creates a task on the tasks page, so we can view the time that we spend on each client and bill accordingly, or for time management purposes we can view that as well. Thereafter we can go to the trial balance page, and over here we can view the trial balance. On the trial balance page we have options to export the trial balance as well as a link to the opening balances page. So if we have opening balances that we'd like to enter, we can enter them on the opening balances page, and once we click save, that will then save those opening balances. If we go back to the trial balance page, we can then view the trial balance. If we'd like to review what's in an account, we can click on the account name, and that will take us to the ledger page. If we scroll down, we can view all of the transactions within that account, and we can also view all of the other accounts with all of the transactions within those accounts. If we go to the statement of comprehensive income page, we can view the income statement for this business, as well as a monthly income statement showing the monthly income and expenses. Thereafter, we can go to the statement of financial position, and this will show us the assets, equity, and liabilities for this business. The statement of cash flow is also automatically generated, and we can view that as well. If we have journal entries that we'd like to enter, we can enter this or enter those journal entries on the journals page. We can also import journal entries using a CSV file. There is also an option for recurring journal entries, so we can use this feature as well. If we go to the tax page, over here we can enable VAT. So for example, if this business was not VAT registered and in the next month it becomes VAT registered, so we can enable VAT. Once we enable VAT, this will then add some additional columns onto the accounts page, and we can then allocate VAT to transactions. So for example, if we want to allocate standard rate VAT to a transaction, we can do that. So let's say, for example, all of the fee income items, we'd like to allocate VAT to them, so we can search for those. We can then tick all of them, and once we allocate VAT to one tick transactions, because all of them are ticked, they'll all be allocated VAT, and we can then click the save button. That will then save all of these transactions and the VAT on them. We can also, for example, charge VAT to other accounts. For example, let's say cleaning was paid to a VAT registered supplier or cleaning services. So let's tick all of these, and if we allocate VAT here and then click save, this will then allocate VAT to all of these transactions. Thereafter, we can go back to the tax page, and we can then view the VAT report. So over here, the VAT report is automatically generated, and we can see all of the fee income items where we charged VAT are shown here, as well as all of the cleaning where we charged standard rate VAT as well. So these are shown over here, and we can then print the VAT report or email it directly to a client, for example. So this is how the VAT report looks. If we go back to the tax page, there's also an option to view the provisional tax calculation that is automatically generated. It tells us that we last uploaded transactions until the 26th of February. In this case, because we had a sample CSV file, we had transactions until that date, and there are 2 days remaining. Based on that, the software will forecast for 2 days. So in this case, we can see here we have actual figures of 105,108, and it's increased by a small amount for the 2 days that was forecast. And based on the forecast, if we, for example, select the provisional tax period as the second provisional tax and the entity type as a company, it will automatically calculate the tax based on that. So in this way, the provisional tax calculation is automatically generated. We also have options to add notes if we will be generating financial statements. So for example, we can enter the name of the note and then the number of rows and columns. Alternatively, we could use this add default IFRS notes option. So what this will do is it will add some default notes based on the accounts that we have. There's also an option to add AI suggested notes, so we can use that as well, and this will look at all of the accounts that we have on the trial balance page, and it will add notes based on that. There's also an option to add notes to a template. So for example, if we added notes and we want to add it to a template, we can do that as well, and then add those notes in subsequent years, or in other financials we may be doing, we can add those notes to those financials. To view a note, we can, for example, click on the note name, and that will take us to the notes page, and we can view that note over there. There's also an option to add reports to the financial statements. If we click on the reports option, these reports show at the start of the financial statements. So if we click on open reports, this will add the default reports for us. For example, we can see here we've got the accountant's compilation report, and if we scroll down, we also have the responsibility statement and some other reports as well. We can update or delete any of these reports as required. Over here as well, we can upload any reports to a template, and then we can load that template file in other financials that we may be doing. If we go back to the notes added page, and for example we want to edit a certain note, so we can click on the note, and let's say we want to make certain wording in bold. So we can highlight this, and we can, for example, select the bold icon, and that will make it bold. We can then click save changes, and that will then save those changes. Thereafter, if we go to the AFS page, this page combines all of the financial statements for us. We can also automatically generate content. So let's go auto generate contents. That will then automatically generate contents for us, and once this is complete, that will then automatically generate contents. We will need to enable which pages should show on the financials. So in this case, we can enable the contents page and all of the other pages that we'd like to view. So let's do that. Thereafter, we can click on generate professional financial statements, and what this will do is it will open up the PDF file with the financials. We can also customize it. For example, if we only have 1 year, we can change the setting to only show 1 year. If we then view those financials, we can see we have the contents page, we have some of the reports that we added, and then we have some of the financial statements that were generated. So we have the income statement as well as the statement of financial position, the statement of cash flow. We also have the detailed income statement as well as the notes that we added. If we scroll back to the top, there is also an option to view the tasks page. So over here we can add new tasks or bulk import multiple tasks. System generated tasks will also show over here. So for example, since we worked on Dr. Wasim Bobat's accounts, there will be a system generated task showing the time logged as well as the status. We can then, for example, advance the status to show as completed, which will move it over to the completed tab, or we can, for example, change it to send for review. We can also add additional time if required, or assign it to a user. For example, let's say we have multiple users, we can assign it to a user, and when they log in, they'll see this task assigned to them. We can also view a breakdown of the time we spent on this task. To add users, we can go to the info page and click on add user, and what this allows us to do is to add a user onto our profile or with access to our profile if we authorize access to that user. So for example, we can click sign up with an email and password, and we can then share those credentials with them. When they log in, if we provide access to any company that we have on our profile, they'll be able to view those companies. So on the profile page, if we go back to the info page and click on profile, we can update our profile details over here, and we can also select a user and provide them access to any company that we have added onto our profile. On their profile, when they log in, they'll be able to view that company, and they'll also be able to work on that company. For example, generate invoices or process bank statements for that company. We can also add clients using the add user page and then provide them access to their company. When they log in, they'll be able to use the client portal. So if we click on client portal, this takes us to this client portal. And for example, if we select this company that we just worked on, Dr. Wasim Bobat Inc., we can, for example, generate reports for the client to see. So if we click enable reports, the client can view their financial performance, for example, their revenue or net profit, as well as some other details below. We can also set up approvals for clients. So for example, if we have VAT that we need the client to approve, we can set up a VAT approval. When they log in, they'll see a approval icon that they'll need to tick to approve, and when they do approve it, we'll see on our side that it was approved. So we can do that as well. And then there is also an option to send messages to the client directly from the messages tab. The client can also upload documents, or we can upload documents, for example invoices, on the documents tab. One more aspect to cover here is the invoices option. So for example, if you need to generate invoices for a client, you can use the add invoice option, where you can, for example, enter your business's details. Once you've entered all of the details on this page, you can click create invoice, and thereafter you can go to the invoices added page, where you can view the invoice, or for example add products or services. If we go to a company where I have some invoices added, let's go to this demo company over here and then go to invoices. We can then view the invoices that we have added. We do have detailed documentation available using the documentation link over here. We can view that, and we also have a tutorial which we have available. If you complete the tutorial, you will receive a certificate to say that you've completed it, and it will help you gain a good understanding of how the software works.